Hi, I'm Rebecca Sheikh from Flourishing Childhood. I'm a parent educator in South East London and on the Executive Council of the International Attachment Network. And I'm currently leading a series of hopeful conversations just to support parents and schools at this time during COVID-19. Just a brief bit about the International Attachment Network. It is a network that promotes the fundamental role of attachment theory in all aspects of human connection. It was established in 1992 by close colleagues of John Bowlby, the founder of attachment theory. It is a membership-based educational charity led by clinicians and academics in the field of attachment theory. And today I'm thrilled to have Lale Akhrass with us to share a little bit more about attachments and how to support children with regulation at this time. I've got real personal connection with Lale because she supported my daughter when she had a bullying incident and really helped us to move past quite aggressive, really scary behavior for our daughter. A little bit of information about Lale. She is a UKCP registered integrative child and adolescent psychotherapist. She provides a relational whole person approach to mental health and vibrancy. Her main concern is helping people to lead full and vibrant lives in spite of psychological pain, trauma, and loss. This all starts with the transformative power of being deeply understood when true needs, feelings, thoughts, and perceptions are made known. So psychotherapy, I just wanted to read this lovely quote of Lale's. She said, psychotherapy can be a process to discover and reclaim the lost parts of ourselves and gain a sense of being whole, connected, and vibrant. So welcome, Lale.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here. It's wonderful. So I'm just going to dive right in, and I wondered whether you could briefly, if this is even possible, explain what attachment is.
I will try. I'm going to do the thing that we don't do, we tell our parents not to do is kind of not have eye contact. I'm going to read a little bit kind of my answer to make sure I kind of really capture briefly what it means. But in essence, it's what I would say emotional safety in mutual connection. This sense of that it's safe for me to ask for and receive emotional comfort and reassurance from another person. And it comes from this innate need that we have, which John Bowlby and his colleagues discovered, and is as primal as eating, really. And what happens is that the success of receiving this in our childhood and the deficits actually leave an imprint on us. And this imprint, we understand, kind of informs how we can receive or expect to receive reassurance and comfort from another person. We call this kind of co-regulation, and it's something that we need really all our lives. But obviously, if we receive that from our parents in the way that they attend to us, then we internalize that over time, and we learn to do it for ourselves. So co-regulation develops into self-regulation. But our children cannot self-regulate unless they've got it from us in how we respond to them. And I think what happens with attachment is that a lot of people focus on the behaviors of attachments. But what I've seen is really important are kind of the underlying feelings of it. Because as children, as babies and children, it is our felt experience of that mutual connection. And if we've received it, we have a security in it. We have kind of a knowingness, it's in us, that we can ask for it and we will get it. And that has a very settling feeling for us. And that kind of is with us in throughout our life.
Yeah, I think it's so important to really recognise that how difficult it is for parents who haven't had that to then be able to do it. And I know you've supported me a lot because my dad had bipolar, so it was quite ambivalent, this attachment that I had, and quite difficult to access that feeling. And what I do love is there's always hope, isn't there? Which is really beautiful.
Yeah, there is hope, because that need for connection is wired in us. And it's such a powerful force within us that I truly believe, and I know this not just professionally, but also personally, because of my own history in childhood, that we can learn and we can heal these wounds very early, that occurred from the way we were nurtured or not nurtured enough, and they can be done with a lot of patience and compassion, and I think also support from other people who know how to do it. It is this knowingness, and if we don't know, we don't know. But I think we can learn it. And over time, it can be internalized as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lale.
Yeah.
Another question I wanted to ask is, I know you're really passionate about supporting children with regulation and their nervous systems, something I'm also really passionate about. And actually, when I was trying to get some support, it was really important that I found somebody that knew about Peter Levine's work and somatic experiencing, which is how I found Lale. So I just wanted a really brief explanation of how the nervous system works, because it really is really hand in hand with attachment.
Yeah, it definitely is. Well, as infants, obviously, they just don't have the resource and the capacity to regulate their nervous system. So when their internal stimulation that's going on, because either they're hungry or they're thirsty or they're uncomfortable, this creates, or they're picking up something from the environment as well. They're picking up tension in their parent, or they're picking up the tensions within the family home. This can overwhelm the child's nervous system, because they haven't yet fully internalized this capacity to regulate, which they're learning from their parents. And so they react. And thankfully, they do react, because that's their way of telling us, I need help. And if we don't attend to it, their reaction will get even stronger, thankfully. So we can finally attend to what it is that they're needing. And then their system then settles down.
Yeah. To interrupt you, it was really interesting when we had our experience, because my daughter was quite aggressive towards me at the time, and with my background, I knew it was coming from a very, very scared place. But it was just wonderful to see, with your integration of the nervous system and attachment, how it just all settled down through the play and really balanced it.
And that's the connection with the attachment, isn't it? Because if we've received that kind of attendance by the parent and that regulation, then the child does, as we said, internalize it. But if we haven't, for whatever reason, then those distress states actually, or arousal states, can over time become quite frightening for the child. And on top of that, they may be actually very distressing and very traumatic experience that the child could experience. So then what happens to our nervous system is that it can go into survival mode, and it can kind of get stuck in the survival mode. And the modes are the ones that we know about, which are the fight, the flight, and the freeze. And there's another one that I would add, which is what we call fawning, this constantly needing to please because it feels safe to do that. And our children or ourselves can get stuck in these high alert defensive survival states and or bounce from state to state. So if they're in what we call hyperarousal, there's a lot of aggressivity, a lot of acting out, a lot of mania, but they can then go into hypoarousal and be kind of very lethargic or frozen or spaced out, or they can bounce between the two. So it's really important that we kind of recognize this in our children, but also if we've had adversity in our childhoods, a lot of chronic stress or even trauma, we also need to learn to recognize these states within us, because it's very hard in these states to relate and reason. It's almost impossible to regulate anyone if you are in a state of hyper or hyperarousal. So it's very important to learn to identify that in yourself and learn also how you come down, how you can settle yourself into kind of what we call the window of tolerance, where you can deal a bit better with your triggers or your stresses.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I've got a really good example from today. I was quite excited about interviewing you, and I've got so many ideas at the moment, so I'm quite hyper, and I can get quite hyper, and my daughter's very sensitive, so she picks on that. So it's been quite a difficult, fractious morning, but at about 12, I saw my therapist, and we did lots of body work, and I just calmed right down, and you could just see the children regulate with me. So it's so important to work on ourselves to help support that regulation.
Yeah, and I think in these times where there's, which are really, truly challenging, for all of us, and on top of already challenges that we might have had before these times, it is so important that we attend to our nervous system and support ourselves in trying as best as we can to regulate ourselves, but also be equally kind of patient with ourselves if we're not. And I think the really important thing is it's okay if we're struggling and to ask for help. As I said, this co-regulation, this idea that just because we learn to self-regulate and that's it, we don't need anybody else to help us, is not truthful. We do need often support, that emotional support, and someone to step in and help us. And it's wonderful to know and have those people who we can call upon when we're needing some additional support.
Thank you. That's really interesting. And I know there's lots of research you can do with Peter Levine's work about the nervous system. So another question I had was sort of in this pandemic, obviously children are going to have a heightened sense of fight and flight, or maybe even disassociation and freeze, especially if they or ourselves have experienced trauma as a child, because these things come to the surface. I've got an example with my mum. She had polio when she was 3 years old, and she had a separation for 6 months from her parents while she was in the iron lung, so she couldn't be with them. And visiting her at the beginning of lockdown, she had a flashback from being 4 and being isolated. So these things can come right to the surface from very young ages. So just wondering how we can help to keep ourselves and children regulated at this time.
We could spend, such a long time on this. I think it's being aware of your state. But I think it's taking a step back. It's actually educating yourself on understanding these states, understanding the sensations, understanding which state that you're in, and identifying that in the children, or in the case if we're caring for our parents, that state. We can't calm somebody else if we're not calm. So you kind of have to attend to yourself. So there's kind of a system that, I call it pause and respond, and then to avoid a reaction. Because often what happens is that in these states, we are very reactive, or we're totally cut off, which isn't good either. So it's being able to pause, literally, so we can then kind of get ourselves in a better state. It also gives us time to think about what might be going on for the other person. In that time, that other person will be feeling your system settling. So, that gives them time for their system settling, because they can't rationalize. If you're asking a lot of questions, or you're trying to get them to explain it, they just can't. Mm-hmm. And actually that further activates them.
Yeah.
And it could be even more scary for them. So it's using our tone of voice can soothe people. We call that prosody. Our gaze can soothe people. Just saying, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. Kind of to allow that emotional storm to go.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like in the moment that it's going to go, but it will go. And you have to remind yourself that it will go. And you can say to the person, it will be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And when you see their system settling, then you can then decide how you need to act. And it could be that you just continue sitting with that person until, or they might be cueing you, and that's what often happens. Our children do cue us to what they're needing. But again, if we're in a heightened state, it's very hard for us to miss those cues. It may be that they need a cuddle. It may be that they just need to be listened. You will know. It's just that you will know how to respond in a way that they need, as opposed to react, because it's the reactivity and getting caught in that then everyone then escalates, and and then it's very hard. It becomes even harder to bring them back to a more regulated state.
Yeah. My daughter had a big, my 4-year-old had a massive meltdown this morning because she wanted to go on the iPad, and I said no, and she was very angry and started kicking me, and I said she couldn't kick me, and I just stayed with her. But it was lovely just to see that point where she was ready for me to offer more, because she was so mad. She didn't want me to touch her or be near her, but there was a point where there was a change, and I said, I'm here, and she just collapsed in my arms, and then she just wants to be close, whereas my elder daughter doesn't really want that. It's only once she's really calm, and then she will have the cuddle. She just wants me maybe to be nearby, or to listen to her anger, or whatever it is. So each can be so different in the way that we respond to them.
Absolutely. Another thing that's also very useful, the more also we get to know our children's triggers. So when they are in a calmer state, and obviously it depends on the age of the child, but even little ones can do that, is, that's when there can be a conversation about what are they feeling and what are they thinking, or what could have happened, and for you to acknowledge how hard things were, or validate what their feelings are. It will help to understand what's going on. It will help them to understand what's going on, which will also be reassuring. And it also helps to understand kind of, what triggered our child, what's going on, because sometimes it could be something that does set them off, but actually it could be something that could have happened the day before or happened the night before, and we kind of haven't connected those dots. So that is useful, and that's keeping your child in mind of what could be going on that is setting them off. What is going on that is distressing them, and just kind of making that kind of inquiry. The other thing that's useful is, yes?
Could I just share a little example there? It's something I shared with you a few weeks ago. My daughter had some lovely time with me and my eldest daughter. We were reading books, and it was about an hour before her little sister knocked on the door, and her little sister came in, and suddenly her behavior was just awful, just really niggly and difficult, and nothing was right. And I just started getting really irritated because we just had this lovely moment. But keeping her in mind, I suddenly said, Nina, are you jealous because her little sister had come in? And her whole body relaxed because I just put my finger on it. And just for me, recognizing that helped move us forward, really.
It's amazing how that happens, isn't it? That when we can identify what is going on for them, and if we get it wrong, they won't settle also. So that's the clue, right? But it's the settlement, because I think we all need to experience feeling seen and heard and understood.
Yeah.
That's how we feel cared for and loved. And isn't that what we all want? It's so yes, that's a very having that and it would be a felt experience. It's not just a cognitive. It's not just that you got it right from a cognitive point of view, but she felt that you had her in mind. She felt your understanding.
Difficult to do, and I definitely don't always get that right. But it's lovely when you.
But can I say to that point, actually, that's a very important point, because no, we don't get it always right, and particularly as well now as again situations creating a lot of stress. So it's really important that if we don't get it right, to not beat ourselves about it. And it's what we call, so there's a rupture and a repair in the connection.
Yeah.
So it's to recognize that you didn't get it right. And it's okay to then go, and that's actually, those are the building blocks of that bond with your child, is to say, I didn't get it right. Obviously in the words that are appropriate for their ages. It's okay to say, I'm sorry, and then to mend it. And and I'm sure you have a lot of experience, we all do, where in that mending, there's a closeness, there's something wonderful that happens as well.
Yeah.
So that's an important step to take when we don't get it right.
Yeah, definitely. Repair is so important. Thank you,
Lale. Yeah.
So I'm just going on. I had another question for you. What did I want to ask? Oh, yes. I just wanted to speak about separations at this time, because obviously a pandemic is a huge separation. And I shared the separation with my mum and how it brought lots to the surface for her. And I know my two are finding bedtime's really difficult. In fact, I've been sleeping in their room since lockdown. They were really funny. They said I was allowed to sleep in my room on Eid because it was Eid. It didn't make me laugh. But actually they are waking up with dreams and just a bit more fearful, and just very unsettled sort of as evening comes along. Fine during the day, but there's definitely this obviously going to bed is quite a huge separation, and wondering how we can help heal these separations or support our children at this time.
Yeah, I mean, they are feeling all the anxieties, aren't they, around them? And bedtime is a change, is a transition. It's dark, it's nighttime. They're lying with all their feelings. So we also know that we're also dreaming a lot. We're also having nightmares. So are they. So it's again supporting them. It's probably allowing extra time in settling them before bed, and each child, you will know how to do that. Is it certainly getting them off the devices, or ending any activity that's overstimulating, even if it's a positive and exciting activity. It's really providing those activities that calm them, that settle them for the night. But I would also encourage that whilst we support them, we also support them to allow themselves to settle. I think it's both things. It's being compassionate, naming their struggle, and also encouraging them to also do it on their own. Because in a way, it can have a feeling that if we don't do that they can never do it on their own. So for the child who gets up 20 times in the night, it is simply, yes, this is really hard for you, but it's nighttime and it's time for you to sleep. Tell me what you're feeling while I walk you to bed. And if we have to do that over several nights, to then they finally get used to that they can, you're there, you're available, you understand, but they need to do it. I think that's really important too.
But I do notice too, my two get heightened energy, and what they're asking for is kind of not right near bedtime. We always have our calming moments, and I actually find they generally calm on their own after this, but we'll have a crazy sort of running around the house or disco, and it feels like it's this sort of release of energy that's been built up over the course of the day, and then having the calm time afterwards seems to help them a little bit as well.
Yes, we know, so maybe they have to. I mean, I wouldn't do dancing around and then expect them to calm and sleep in 45 minutes. That's not going to happen. Maybe after, it's a bit like us, if we do a workout, we have kind of a cooling time. So maybe that's accompanied with very calming music and very soothing music. Or maybe while you do the dancing and you shake it all out, which is a wonderful thing to do, that maybe you add a slow waltz afterwards. I don't know, something so that they can go from high activation, releasing all that kind of energy, but then kind of something more soothing and calming, and they can kind of feel that in their bodies. And then all the other activities that one does to calm them and signal, those lovely moments, and then it's time to sleep. But it is kind of moving them through those transitions to get them ready for going to bed. Yeah.
And is there anything more that you can share about attachments and separations in the nervous system?
Well, separations has a lot. It's very significant, right? Because separation and loss ties into our own experiences of separation and loss. And they could be actually, in many of our families, actual losses. So they could be actually grieving that's going on as well. And and we're being separated from our friends, we're being separated from our families. And the children will be feeling this too. And the loss of their their routines, the loss of the loss of the way things were before. So I think it's understanding all of that. But also I think we need to also be very careful that we also are not projecting some of these onto our children, or transferring our own feelings about this onto our children. Because actually some children, they will pick that up. And our children are more in the present, are more in the moment. And if sometimes we can be oversensitized about all these separations and losses, actually, when if they're enjoying something in the moment, they're not going to be thinking about that. but then also maybe extra effort has to go in terms of connecting them with their friends and connecting them with their family members as well.
Mm. Yeah,
I don't know if I've answered this. It's. I think it's naming it and talking about it in an age-appropriate way.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Mm. Yeah, I sat with Nina the other day, and I don't know why, but for some reason, I just hadn't really asked her how she was doing because of coronavirus. We sort of have just family discussions, or whatever. But I just said, "How are you?" And she said, "Oh, I'm really missing my friends, Mom." And it was just really lovely to just hear that. I mean, obviously, I knew that, but actually, there is a need. And so we actually organised a pavement play date. So her friends sat on the pavement and they sat sort of, a good distance away. And it was really good for both their mental health. So trying to find ways in that you can support these separations, I think.
That's wonderful. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for some children, change and transition is really hard. Really, really hard, and we need to help them with that. Yeah, so that's wonderful.
Yeah, and in fact, even the change with the Prime Minister suggesting that we can go out as many times as we like, we're actually allowed to sit on the ground, really helped my daughter with going out. It was the first time since lockdown yesterday that we didn't have a massive meltdown going out, because that felt a bit more normal to her. So I think we underestimate how this affects them, especially if they're sensitive to transitions.
Yeah, and the changes and the things, the routines that they no longer had. Yeah.
Thank you. I know it's such a big topic, but thank you. That's really helpful. I also wanted to, and this is also a really big topic, to ask you a little bit about the nervous system and some practical tools that you can give us to support children at this time.
Okay. Well, I think a lot of it is, it's we can talk about practical tools, but I think a lot of it is being kind to ourselves in this time and understanding. Be very patient with our children as well. To remember that their reactions are a way of communicating something to us and not to take it personally. I think sometimes that can be done. I think it's really important that we prioritize having fun with our children. But even in every day, we need to make time to have fun with them, because I think that's, not only does that bring us closer to our children, but that's very regulating. But it's also recognizing when they need some time, some downtime. I think that's equally very important. I know that a lot of the children that I work with, they're feeling that the remote learning is very stressful for them. I know parents are feeling it as well. They feel a lot of pressure to teach their children when they're not teachers. I know you're a teacher, but a lot of parents are not teachers, and and if they have many children, and if they're struggling with computers and internet connection. So I think we need to maybe let go some of the expectations that we had before COVID, and again, kind of be more understanding. They will be okay. And again, just understand what sets your child off, what distresses them. There are some very, we talk a lot about grounding and how grounding is really important to settle us. So there's so many exercises on the internet fun exercises that one can do with the children and with ourselves to ground. Somebody gave an example of if you pretend your feet are suction cups, but for some that might be too much stimulation. So just, have your feet on the ground and feel it.
I did a nice one with the girls yesterday. Nina was very hyper, and I was like, right, we need to just do something. And I just started clapping. And actually, their feet were really still, and they were so concentrating on the rhythm. It really settled us all. There's a bit of mirroring as well, isn't it?
Getting them to focus. So even a little exercise like balancing your foot on one leg. And then changing it to the other leg. But some children need to discharge a lot of energy. So shaking and wiggling and dancing is fantastic to let go of some of this energy that is just, there's too much in it. Peter Levine talks a lot about making a VOO sound that's very calming. There are many YouTubes that demonstrate it, but that's a wonderful one, and the children love it because it sounds like a tugboat. But it has a very calming effect on our nervous system. And this idea of holding, we then hold ourselves, and we can teach that to our children because sometimes they don't want us to hold them when they're very activated. So they can hold themselves or put their hand on their heart. And even if you do it, even now I'm doing it and I can feel my system coming down. It's a lovely one. And just stopping. And the idea with all of these exercises, and there are many, is that you allow the time, you don't need to say anything, to allow the body to take it in, allow the body to experience it. And so that you can really feel the wonder of these little exercises that it's doing us to settle us. So grounding and holding, containing, all those wonderful things. Another exercise, which is also really lovely, is to name things. Like one thing, when we're in a very heightened state, we become very kind of tunnel vision. And orienting gets kind of lost. And orienting is a lovely way for us to take in our environment and signal to us that we're okay, or that there is something to worry about and we need to do something about it. But we're all of us are okay. So orient yourself. And what I sort of say, I go 3-3-3, which is the easiest one to remember, but name me 3 things that you like in the room. And you orient yourself to those 3 things, and you ask your child to name them, and you can do it with them. And name me 3 things that you hear that you like. And they will say, I can hear the bird. And each time you stop to allow that to settle in. And name me 3 things that you can touch that feel nice. And they might pick a pillow, or they might pick their cuddly toy. And name me 3 things that you taste that feel nice. And they can say, I can taste the lollipop that I just had, or I can taste the orange, or, so we cover the senses of hearing, what we can see, what we can hear, what we can touch, and taste. Did I leave one out? The ground is another one. I can feel the ground. I can, mommy give me a hug and I can feel that. So that's a lovely one to very simple, that can actually also help settle our children and ourselves.
I think that's the one I use the most. Even when I'm doing the dishes, kind of looking around and seeing what I can see. And I know there's some more steps when you are an adult, noticing your breath. And actually there's something in the neck, isn't there, Lale, that helps also regulate your system. Would you mind explaining what that is when you move your neck from side to side?
Well, that can, again, because it's releasing all the tension, right? And I think it's more just noticing the tension in our body and bringing our awareness to what is going on. So, even, feeling, yes, so you're moving, yes, you're moving, and I think it goes with orienting as well. So you're looking and you're moving. And it is, signaling, and you can say things to yourself. You're feeling very emotional about something, just naming that to yourself. You don't need to go into an understanding of what it is, but just naming, I'm feeling really sad now. And then noticing, putting the feeling, the emotion with actually the feeling within us, and again, this goes to the attachment styles, because if we're, what we call more an avoidant person, then, we may be running away from actually communicating to somebody that we actually do need to talk about something. We do need to convey what's going on. And, anyway, well, that's kind of, I'm sort of going into another subject, but
well, actually, that was my next question I was going to ask. Sort of, these are so important for attachment, aren't they? Because you are giving yourself time to be present, and then you're more likely to be able to attune to your child and support them in a more connected way, which is supportive of secure attachment.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And it is easier said than done.
Oh, yes, I certainly know that. And especially when we've had our own traumas. I know you're so passionate about supporting people with traumas, but these so easily come to the surface. And I think I love that word that I think Peter Levine uses called titration. So it's just little drops, isn't it, that can build and build.
Yeah, that's a lovely exercise. That's that pendulation. And he's so right, because the only way we can tolerate any discomfort in us is to feel the comfortable. So it resources us. And actually then when you bring your attention to what is comfortable, and you feel it in your body, and then kind of bring your attention to what's not comfortable in you. And we have ways of doing that with children as well, which is really fun. And then you go back, and this kind of going backwards and forwards, and kind of settles the part of you that is really distressed. So you're not going full on into attending that distressed part, but rather resourcing it. And the body then kind of does it on its own. That's the titrate. It just, and you do little bits at a time, always little bits. So you can integrate. First, we can discharge and integrate kind of what is going on for us. So we feel more together. We feel more whole. Otherwise, it's very easy for us to split things off and not feel things or parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Gosh, that's so fascinating, Lale. Were there any other things you wanted to share just to support parents at this time before we finish today?
Oh, what else can
I really love the tool you use with the body and thinking about the colours in it. Would you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, well, these are all these exercises that we do to notice our sensations, because I think we haven't really been taught to notice what's going on in our bodies, and when we're more activated, we certainly don't want to feel what's going on in our bodies. So part of that is just learning to notice, bring awareness to what's going on. And the way we kind of deepen that experience of noticing is recognizing, it kind of pops in our head, kind of colors, that we might have certain colors for some sensations that we have, and that can change. Or we have a sense of shapes, and then it just it helps us to understand better what's going on in us in a way that can It's not scary, but the reason why we're doing that is because if we connect to what's going on in us, we can have a better understanding of what emotionally is happening to us, and have a better understanding of what cognitively is happening to us, or perceptively is happening. It's that kind of, you're connecting all the dots. And when they connect, it's a really settling feeling. It's kind of a balm, because there's a congruency. It all fits, and we're not trying to, as I get, split or fragment bits of us, either our feelings or our sensations or parts of us, that we can, we literally, we are more connected.
Which is really what attachment's about. So
yes.
Gosh, Lale, thank you so much for sharing such valuable information at this time. I just wondered, would you mind sharing how people could get hold of you if they would like to get any support or just get in contact?
Sure, there's my website. So just psychotherapist Lale Akhrass, and all the details are there.
Okay, lovely. And I'll share them at the end of this interview when I post it. So thank you again for all your time and all your wisdom. And hopefully we'll speak again.
Thank you.
Thank you.